The Rock Whisperer. Do you hear the earth talking to you?
Unit 6 Video Notes. Factors of Climate. So we've done some review on the water cycle, or the hydrologic cycle, and there are some important terms that you should remember. Transpiration, evaporation, runoff, precipitation, groundwater, zone of aeration, and zone of saturation. We have also learned through our discussion after watching Chasing Ice that climate is looking at conditions over a long period of time. That could be 10 years, 50, maybe even 100 years of certain conditions, but we're looking at temperature and precipitation. When we look at weather, we're looking at day-to-day conditions. A lot of people like to say that, we've just had a 4-week stretch of cold weather and therefore climate change doesn't exist. But that's just a 4-week snapshot, not something that's been a pattern over 10 or 50 or 100 years. So now what we're going to discuss are factors that influence climate. And there are 6 different factors that we're going to talk about. First is latitude. You need to know that the higher your latitude is, that is the closer you are to the North Pole or to the South Pole, the colder your climate is going to be. The lower your latitude, meaning closer to zero or closer to the equator, the warmer your climate is going to be. This has to do with the angle of the sun, or from the lab that we've done, the angle of insolation. The angle of insolation is greater between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn than it is when we go towards the poles. Altitude is also another factor that will influence your climate. The closer you are to sea level, the warmer your climate will be. The higher your altitude or your elevation is, the colder your climate is going to be. This is why we can have snow at the equator, especially if you're at altitudes of above 5,000 feet. In the mountains, you will have the possibility of having snow. Large bodies of water, such as the Great Lakes or an ocean, can help to moderate the temperatures of a climate. When you have land that is near the water, it will take on some of the characteristics of the water. Let's talk about Buffalo, New York for an example. The winters in Buffalo, New York are actually slightly warmer than they probably normally would be, because Lake Erie still is relatively warm compared to the air temperature, and it's causing the surrounding air in that land area to be a little bit warmer. The opposite is true in the summer. In the summertime, Buffalo is actually slightly cooler than what we would expect, because the water doesn't heat up as fast and the land temperature is warmer and the air temperature is slightly cooler, as we talked about earlier with our land and sea breezes. Prevailing winds can also be a characteristic, and these winds will blow in a particular direction, and where they come from will give us the type of weather or the type of heat or humidity from that particular area. This is very similar to the source regions that we talked about earlier in the weather unit. So if the area of air is blowing from an area that might be maritime tropical, that prevailing wind is going to give you a more warm, moist climate in that particular area. Mountain ranges are also our 5th type of factor that can influence our climate. We have a windward and a leeward side to a mountain range. The windward side, the side where the wind is more dominant, the side where the wind hits first, is usually cooler and wetter. This is because on that particular side of the mountain, when the air hits, it's going to rise up or it's going to ascend on that side of the mountain, and we're going to form clouds. When we form clouds, we usually have precipitation. When the air comes down the other side of the mountain or descends and it starts to expand, it will warm up. So windward side of the mountain, cool and wet. The leeward side of the mountain is warm and dry or desert-like. And the last one that we're going to talk about are ocean currents. We probably all know that England, the London area, they don't get a lot of snow because of the Gulf Stream current, and that's bringing warm water to that particular area. those ocean currents can help regulate the temperatures of an area. If the ocean current's bringing that warm water, it can change the air temperature, just like we talked about earlier with the large bodies of water. These currents are going to help to regulate the temperature of the area. Like we've talked about, if the water is warm, it's going to bring that particular temperature to the surrounding area. Cool ocean currents will cool the area down, like the coast of California.
Don't forget to listen to the Earth. You just may hear it speak.